It has happened in Vegas. The Cup's going to stay in Vegas. And for the first time, the Golden Knights are Stanley Cup champions.
Hey, welcome back to the Bread Loves Hockey podcast. This is episode 2. I'm really happy to have you guys back with me here for another episode. We've got a very special guest today. He's a former roommate of mine at Clarkson, same with my last guest, Dean. I'm very happy to have Owen Curry here on the show today. Owen, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brett. Thanks for inviting me. Really excited to be on the show. Saw the first episode, watched it twice already. Big fan, long-time fan.
Long time. That's what we love to hear. The loyal viewers.
Been here since day one.
And we appreciate you for that.
Stoked to talk about hockey. One of the two sports that I actively follow, that and Formula One. Started in Clarkson and with you and with Dean and Justin, and from there all the way out here to Montana, still watching hockey.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about your hockey journey. I guess a bit about your life journey in general as it pertains to when you were getting into hockey. So, you didn't really watch it a ton growing up, right?
Some. My dad watched some. Both my parents also went to Clarkson, and so they had that hockey knowledge. They went to the games. My dad was next door neighbors to Craig Conroy, former NHL player and Clarkson Golden Knight alum, current GM of the Flames.
Yeah, he just got hired.
Tutored him. Yeah, it was crazy. So they knew Craig relatively well, ish, and moved down to Virginia. That's where I grew up, and we went to one Norfolk Admirals game. They were an ECHL team for somebody in the mid 2000s, and it was for Dad's birthday. We went out, and it was a blast, but I didn't think much of it. There wasn't a lot of ice. We had some birthday parties at a ice rink that was maybe an hour away, but that was the only time I'd ever skated at all before I went to college. And then went to Clarkson, followed where my parents went, and fell in love with watching D1 hockey in Cheel Arena.
Yeah, Norfolk. You don't hear that name too much, and I don't. It's so hard to follow some of the ECHL affiliations because they change hands so frequently. So yeah,
Totally.
Who knows? I mean, somebody probably knows who they were affiliated with at the time, but I mean, at that stage, you didn't know anything about that. It just you're at the game, you're having a good time.
Just a thing to go to. We did Monster Jam the year before, Harlem Globetrotters. It was just another thing to go do.
Yeah. I think when I was growing up, I got invited to go to a couple of the Albany River Rats games back when they were down there. I never ended up going. My uncles were actually pretty big fans, but at the time, I was like, it doesn't really seem very interesting. Like they barely score at all. It's like, oh, what? Like, oh, we're gonna root for a goal every 30 minutes, ugh.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
So at the time I didn't express any interest, and now looking back I'm like, damn, that would have been so much fun. I would have loved to see the River Rat jerseys in action, because those things are sweet. I should pick up one of those at some point. They were.
You could have had
awesome.
one.
I know.
I
could have had my own merchandise. I could have been a big River Rats fan. Totally would have changed the trajectory of how I became a fan in general. I probably would have been I think they were the Devils affiliate at that time. So I think I probably would have been a Devils fan, I guess.
Interesting.
But
a different
we're here
timeline.
instead, and I guess we're talking about the Senators. We'll get into them a little bit later, but we're both rocking our Sens gear today. We've got the Eric Carlson. I've got also a Carlson back there, but I'm repping the home duds today, which I think they're pretty clean, right? I mean, I think they're much better than the older logo, the last one they used.
Definitely.
It's not like they reinvented the wheel with this one. It's an older logo that they pretty much they changed a couple little things, right? Like I think this was red before. This black part was red, and a couple other minor changes, but they look sharp. Another one of the black main or primary logos or jerseys rather.
Yeah, I do really like the new jerseys. A big improvement from the 3D Sens era. Not my favorite.
Yeah.
Granted, that was when I started becoming a fan, and the majority of my time as being a fan was in those jerseys. So
Naturally.
happy to see some change.
Yeah.
But had some fun off jerseys, thirds, alternates, sort of like specific iteration jerseys, like the one I'm wearing, that made it a little more bearable jersey wise.
Yeah.
But no, we were definitely not known for our jerseys or our hockey for a good
Yeah.
chunk there.
Yeah. And it's been rough recently too. So
Yeah.
there's been pretty big spurts of like super good success. They went to the Cup final in 2007, did not
Yeah.
win that one unfortunately for you guys, and then made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals back in 2016-2017 season. Tough, hard fought Game 7 loss to Pittsburgh, who would end up winning the Cup. I
Game 7 double
double
overtime.
overtime. What was
Oh,
it? Matheson was the one who
it's
ended
Chris
the.
Kunitz.
Oh,
Chris
Kunitz.
Kunitz.
It was Kunitz. Yeah,
It
yeah,
lives in my heart because that's when I started to become a Senators fan. Was that playoff run?
yeah,
I like sort of was watching. It was the team that I picked. Either I got drafted to it in Chell when I played as be a pro, or they were happened to be an hour and a half from school. I don't remember what it was, but picked the Sens as my team, sort of as an off thing, and went on this crazy playoff run. Was following it with one of our friends and my roommate at the time, Vince. He
yeah,
was a Pens fan, and oh man, it was heartbreaking. I felt like I was at the mountaintop right there, about to head to the finals. We definitely would have beat the Preds if we were there instead of the Pens. And yeah, from there just a free fall. Hit the Duchesne
yeah,
trade, and it just goes even just as far downhill as you can imagine. Just scraping along the bottom, and here we come, like a phoenix from the ashes.
hopefully,
Hopefully.
yeah. Oh man, that would have been a fun Stanley Cup final if the Sens were playing the Preds. Another one of the first time Cup winner finals. It would
Definitely.
have been that would have been really cool, but alas, it wasn't to be.
And it
And
would have been like such big defensive names.
yeah, yeah, Subban on that squad when he was in his prime. That was
Carlson.
Carlson, obviously, and he's still showing he can do it. We can talk a little bit about Carlson a little bit here, but so I know previously when I talked to you about how you became affiliated with Ottawa, you talked about how you never really rooted for a team that was like super good when you started rooting for them. You kind of like to pick like the middle of the pack, like mediocre teams. I think that's how you chose the Chargers at the time to be your NFL team, and now you don't really follow them as
Hmm.
much now, and they are good now. So I guess that would make sense.
Right.
You don't want to actually root for a team that's doing well. You want to
Right.
ride out the middle of the pack, 16th, 17th in the league.
Hmm.
That's pretty much how it was for you?
Yeah, it was. I think they were. I don't want to pick the Yankees, or I guess the Lakers, right, as like my favorite team. That just
Yeah,
feels like a cop out. Just be like, oh, I like the Golden State Warriors. Everybody likes the Golden State
yeah.
Warriors. They won a lot of basketball games. So yeah, I think it wasn't necessarily that they were like dead average. It was just the fact that they weren't like some massive, well-known franchise. It was more of like a smaller market, as much as it's
Yeah,
the capital of Canada. Smaller market as far as just people-wise, and and it was an hour and a half from school, and I think that
yep,
really solidified it because. The first game we went to was like a $25 deal where the student union paid for a bus up there and a ticket to the game and a bus ride home, and we said, why not? That's
yeah,
gonna be a blast. Um, yeah, it kicked it all off.
yeah. I definitely feel like I have a place in my heart for a lot of the smaller market teams. I've also felt that way where like I'm not usually a big market guy, although I do like the Bruins, so I guess that's a bit of an outlier, but that is because of our friend Dean, who's a big Bruins fan.
Right.
That's why I root for them. But otherwise, yeah, like I always sort of feel I gravitate towards the smaller market teams. And I guess I don't know if you can really consider Vegas a small market team. I mean, I guess they probably still are compared to some of the other teams, but like
First,
they're
definitely, but
getting
now,
there. They're getting there, and they'll probably get some bandwagon teams now that they've actually won the cup. Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, that first game that we went to, that was the first NHL game that I have ever been to. It was back in December of 2016, and I was really excited to go. Yeah, I think it was $20 or yeah, to $25,
Something like
something
that.
we're like to go there on a bus plus the ticket
Right, right.
and take us back in the same night. Like, are you kidding
It
me?
was
It
it was
was
awesome.
it was a great deal. We were very thankful for the Clarkson student union to get us those. And I think we did that one other time too. Um,
Yeah, I think so.
it was I think that one was for it was like a preseason World Cup game,
Mm.
like USA versus Canada, something like
Ooh,
that.
yes, yes, yes. I
So
definitely remember that.
that was cool. So I think that was either the first time I'd been to the Sens Arena or the second time after going to this game, which was
Right.
against the Panthers, and they ended up scoring 2 goals in the first period, and that was it. And by they I mean the Sens. The Sens scored two
Uh,
goals. We were all excited, and then that was it for the whole game. They won. We're like, at least we got to cheer for some goals, and we did get to see them
at some
win.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's funny because looking back now, because I have this horrible curse where almost every single game that I go to, the team that I'm rooting for to win does not win. I'm pretty sure I'm like
Yeah.
12 and or 5 and 12 or something like that. And so it's funny that the first one that I went to, I was able to actually get the win, which is probably why I stuck with it, I guess. I was like, "Oh,
Right.
this is easy. You just
I
go,
can do
you watch
this.
your team win, they win the game, you go celebrate afterwards. No problem."
Oh yeah.
And then I learned the hard, cold truth, which is that I am so absolutely cursed when it comes to
It's so
watching.
bad.
I mean, I've been on multiple road trips where I've seen two different games, and both games I lost. And it wasn't even like I was consistent. Like I went with my fiance Bree. We went to go see a game, 2 games. We went to see a game in Pittsburgh versus the Bruins. So it was a home game for Pittsburgh, and I was rooting for Boston because I'm a big Boston fan and I hate the Pens. So I was rooting for Boston, and they lost. I think it was like 3-0 or something like they didn't even score a goal. And I was like, this is a great start to the freaking trip. And of course Bree, because I had all the jerseys, she's like, oh well, I'll just root for the other team. So she's rocking her Crosby jersey. She's like, and she's not even really happy when they score because she knows like I'm upset. So she's like, I'm not really a Penguins fan. So she's just like looking around. Everybody's cheering, and there's a couple fans that are Penguins fans that are booing this Bruins guy over there that they came with, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then we go to Columbus, who actually they were playing Ottawa. Bree was wearing this jersey, and I was rooting for Columbus because I just wanted to. I wanted to wear my Cannon jersey, and so we were
Yeah.
rooting for them. They lose. I think it was 3-2 in the shootout. I was like, oh my
Ooh.
god. At least I got to hear the cannon go off, which was fun. Because I
Yeah.
was like, if I don't get to hear the cannon while I'm in Columbus, I'm gonna be ticked. And
You would have to go back.
I would, and I do want to go back to Columbus because that was actually one of Bree and I both think that it's one of our favorite arenas that we've been to. The fan experience was
Nice.
awesome. Like everybody was so welcoming. They have a nice little like arena district there with like bars and restaurants and stuff around it, and it's super spacious inside the arena and nationwide. It's really nice. They have a ton of great food options, so I definitely want to make another trek over there.
Yeah, that's not one I've been out to. I so far have seen the Ottawa Arena, CTC. I've been to Capital One in DC. I went with my best friend from growing up, Sam, when I was in town visiting him. Just spur of the moment, went to go see a Kings game. Funny story, we ended up trying to sneak down into the lower bowl to get closer in seats and sat in just some unsuspecting like sex throw up from the glass in the corner seats. And some people came down the aisle looking at us sort of funny and walked up, said, "Oh, I think you're in our seats." We're like, "Oh, sorry. Well, whoops, we're in the wrong row. We'll just go back here."
Yeah, yeah. We're in the wrong row. and also the wrong section, the wrong floor.
Right.
And
we had to take an elevator to get down to these other seats.
and we aren't even really supposed to be here, so.
Yeah. We're sitting behind them, so we're now in row 7. They're all wearing jerseys for the same player, from like throughout this player's career, and they're all speaking a different language. And so the player was Vitek Vanček. I looked up Vitek Vanček wife on my phone, and it was the person whose seat I was sitting in. And
Yeah.
I looked over to Sam. We were like, "Oh crap! Uh-oh, that's the starting goalie's wife and
Yeah.
family."
Whoops.
Oops.
They're like,
So then we just sat there behind them the rest of the game.
That's awesome. Of course, Vitek now with New Jersey had a great year last year. So that was fun. That's a crazy story though.
Yeah, just happened to be right place, wrong time, I
Yeah.
guess. No, but that was a cool one. And then also been to Gila River with you and Dean,
Yeah.
and the T-Mobile Arena with you and
Fortress.
Dean. And that was another one of your famous curse moments where we saw the Golden Knights twice in one weekend and watched them lose twice in one weekend.
Oh my God.
But great hockey. I mean, it was a blast.
They lost, I think it was 4-2 in Arizona, and then they lost 3-2 in Vegas against the Colorado, and I was like, oh my God. Like, the first one, I was like, okay, this sucks because Arizona's garbage, but
Right.
at least we get to go see them play at home. They should have a lot of fire in them to go beat the Avs, and they scored like really early in that game. It was like the first minute or two, and I was like, yes, like, oh my God, finally, like Stevenson scores. He's one of my favorite players, and then I don't know what happened. I think they went down like 3-2 in like the second or something, and then there was no scoring in the third. They couldn't put the puck in the net, and that was it. And that was like, oh my gosh. There were a couple Avs fans back there. They were singing All the Small Things on the way out, which ticked me off.
As a big Blink-182
yeah,
fan.
as a Blink fan and as a Vegas fan, it was like, go! You really know how to get my goat.
I think you ended up on top. You know, they won a cup, but so did y'all. So it's okay.
That's true. I guess I can forgive them.
All's fair in the end.
Yeah. We both got our wish. So I guess speaking of cups, let's talk a little bit about how you're feeling about the Senators off season this year. I don't think cup aspirations are in the mix for Ottawa this season, but let's talk a little bit about, playoff push potentially, how you're feeling about the additions and the subtractions for the team, and we can talk a little bit about the ownership group coming in too.
Definitely, and I think where I'm going to start. I think that's the biggest addition, right? Is just some stability, hopefully.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hope in the Sens community to get, big names, fancy things. A documentary behind what's going on would be very cool. We all want that, but we don't have Ryan Reynolds. We have Michael Andlauer, and I think it's going to be okay. I feel pretty confident that things are going to start getting better. The recent firings of Trent Mann and Troy Mann and the quitting of another person in the front office, I don't remember their name at the moment, is a little interesting, but it's probably just part of this big change over in new ownership, and ultimately the on-ice product is for the most part going to be the same and a year older, which is, in my opinion, the majority of what the Sens need for any amount of success here in the future. Get older, stay healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, and you got to think, with those other firings, that Pierre Dorian's leash is probably a little short this season. My thought is if they don't make the playoffs or if they don't even get close, he's gone. I mean, he made some great moves last offseason, or at least at the time it seemed like they were good. And I think Claude Giroux was still a success. Obviously, DeBrincat was not willing to stay long term, which right. I don't think it was wrong for Pierre to bet on Alex DeBrincat coming in, having a good season, and then sticking around. I think that was a smart play, and it just didn't work out. But they made some good moves. They got Cam Talbot, who didn't pan out, and now they're dealing with Korpisalo as the main guy. We'll see how he performs after a couple of down years with Columbus and then LA. Overall, I think like you said, things are looking they're looking better. You do lose
For
that
sure.
youth and that scoring with the Brickett, but they had a couple of other acquisitions, and they're hopefully looking to get Josh Norris back, right? I think he's in the mix for
Yeah.
playing this year, which will be huge.
I recently saw on Twitter him playing in a charity golf tournament and just like nailed a drive. So I think his shoulder's better. We've been
You
really
need
bad
those
at
for
keeping our
golf.
centers shoulders. Um, Centers and shoulders just don't mix in our team. They always break them. It's been a couple years in a row that we just had messed up shoulders. Yeah, big to get Norris back. Big to get Pinto and keep him healthy.
Yeah,
And obviously Stützle, number one center, if not number two, could be the best second center in the league.
yeah. There's an argument there. I think Pinto had a great season. I was actually watching a couple days ago the NHL's been putting out the videos of every goal scored in the regular season for each team. So I watched the Ottawa one, and as someone who isn't actually an Ottawa fan, I was surprised at how many goals Shane Pinto was putting in and how effective he was, in the offense. I didn't really realize like his capability and the role that he was playing. I think if he stays healthy this year, he's due for like a big season. I could see, closer to 70 points probably is not out of the realm of possibility for him.
Yeah, he was super efficient early in the season and put up a ton of points, but he tailed off a little bit, and he had some injury concerns as well in the past. But he's somebody that if we can keep around on a good deal for a couple more years, I think that would be huge for the team. Just as far as like you said, keeping the team young. Like we have a relatively young team as is. Our captain is 25, I think. Tim is 22,
Yeah,
maybe.
I was just looking at the Cap Friendly here, taking a look at their roster, and yeah, just looking through their forward core. You got 21, 24, 25. You got these guys locked up for a long time from you know
Yeah,
Stützle and Brady, so that's always good. And then Shabbat, you got him locked up. He's only 26, so it's definitely one of the
right.
younger cores in the league, which they have added some of that veteran presence. They've got Giroux. They also picked up Chikrin at the trade deadline last year,
Huge.
so that's going to be good. They've got him signed for a couple more seasons here, so we'll see how he performs.
Yeah, I could see there being a battle for the number one power play position between Sanderson, Shabbat, and Chikrin because I think all three of those players can play in that point slot on the power play, and I think all three of them can compete to be the best defenseman on the Sens right now. Jake is a next level NHL player. He is so young, but still already so great at just gap control and stick checking, and he is so incredibly calm on the breakout. I think this is we're in his sophomore year now because he was a rookie
I
last
I
year.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Or his sophomore year, and we're already like he's a lock for our top four, and would be our top pair if we didn't already have Shabbat and Chikrin and Zub, right? So like that is going
Yeah.
to be our top four, and anything else is fine with me.
Yeah. That is looking like it's going to shape up to be a really solid decor going forward. Yeah, I think on a couple other teams, you would see Sanderson jumping into that role in the top pair. Maybe not this season on some teams, but he definitely has the growth potential to get there on a lot of squads. And then yeah, like Chikrin and Shabbat, that's a great uh, top pair, especially offensively. How much they provide, yeah,
Yeah,
like you mentioned, the power play. I think either of those guys could quarterback a power play unit really well, and even just having them do a 1-2 punch is going to be super huge for Ottawa going forward. Um,
yeah, absolutely. I think that the back end has been a bit of a concern for a while. I think in the past couple years
Definitely.
we had some forward power, but been a bunch of, I mean, not ineffective, but just like not playmakers, not like X factor defensemen, right? Like they can do their job, but it's nice to have some people that like hopefully you can count on to get some points and like do some stuff. Right? no shame on Carlson. He's obviously the best at doing that, but outside of him,
Yeah.
not a whole lot else.
Yeah, and I think because I had Ottawa in my preseason bracket making the playoffs in 2022, 2023, and part of my hesitation for putting them in there at the time was I was a little concerned about the depth at D, but I ended up pushing them through because I really felt that their forward core had taken a huge step, especially with the additions that they made that offseason. So now they've got another year under their belts. You've got more competition for some prospects coming up, although at this
Totally.
stage, it's kind of like the prospects are already here for the most part, right?
Right.
Looking at their pipeline in terms of players that are not actively on the roster, there aren't as many, big name prospects or younger players there because of all the roles that these guys have stepped into recently. You're looking at maybe a big year for Ridley Gregg coming up. I think a lot of Sens fans were excited to see him. I think he's probably going to play a more prominent role this year, either third line or maybe starting off the fourth line and see how it goes. I think maybe Boucher could also get some looks this year, especially if they start having some injury concerns. I think he could hop in and perform well. But yeah, pretty much for the most part, this is it. Like this is going to be your core going forward.
Absolutely.
I don't know how many of these guys you would really consider a part of like the future core of the team, but it does seem like they're building up to something, and they just got to find the right pieces to mesh things together. Bringing in some other older names. I think Giroux is going to be great for them again this season. We'll see if
Absolutely.
they sign any other free agents. There's still some names like I don't know if they have the money for it, but maybe they could bring in Matt Dumba. I think that might not be a bad move. They've got about $5 million in cap space. I think the only RFA they have is Sokolov, who's not going to take up much of anything. So, I could see that fit.
Sokolov and Pinto both have to be signed.
Oh, Pinto too. Okay.
Pinto too, and Pinto is going to be a little pricier because Pinto is a good two-way forward, good two-way center. But yeah, as far as prospects go, I think, like you said, we're pretty much at the point where you're either here or you're fighting to be in those final couple spots. For me, it's Roby Arventi, Finnish sniper. Guy's got just a wicked shot. And Tyler Boucher, big American, throw his body around, gotten like suspended in the O or something. No, in college for just like hitting too big or something.
I think I saw that.
Big guy, moves a lot of weight around, and yeah, I think Sokolov having a good year, Greg having a good year, and then on the defensive end, if Thompson and JBD are around, we'll see who goes where, but I think there's enough on the top end that still needs to develop and grow and mesh that there's enough focus up there. And bringing Hamonic back for another year, I think, is huge. He's just a good stable guy and a great locker room guy. He loves to be in Ottawa. From all the interviews, he wants to be here. He wants his family to be here. He's an Ottawa guy now, and it's good to have that sort of mentality when it felt like for at least the last couple years that I've been following the Sens, the media around it has been that no one wants to play in Ottawa, that it's somewhere you get dealt and then you leave as soon as you can. And I think that's starting to change a little bit with faces like Brady Tkachuk and with Tim and with Drake and Josh, and how they're trying to create more of a community around the team that seems more fun than living in Ottawa might be. I don't know. I haven't done it before.
Yeah, and definitely having the new ownership group, bringing some stability there is going to be huge for that, for attracting free agents that to sign long term or maybe do a 1 year or 2 year deal just to see how things go, and then if things work out well, if it looks like there's going to be progress on the new arena front, which I believe is
Right.
still in the works, I think that would be huge, not only for players to be there, but also staff and obviously fans who actually live in Ottawa who don't want to have to drive out to Canada to go to see all the games. I haven't
Yeah.
heard much recently about continued talks for the arena deal, but I don't think the city of Ottawa is opposed, and I think that it would be in the new ownership group's best interest to seriously consider the a new downtown arena. I haven't heard much about it recently, but yeah, I don't see why it doesn't make the most sense, especially if you're spending that much to buy the team. You're gonna want to invest in your product on ice as best you can, and your brand. So we'll see how that goes.
Absolutely, and to my knowledge, the deal was a real estate deal as well, because the CTC was owned by the Melnick estate as well, and
Yeah,
so with that
right.
sale, they were able to recoup some cost at least on that land. Um, and I think, yeah, the plan hopefully is at some point to get a downtown arena. And I'd love to be able to go back to Ottawa and see that. But I think for now, trying to get the front house and the back of house in order, hopefully before this season rolls around, would be great. But we're counting down the days. October is not too far off, and hockey's coming for us. We gotta hopefully get some ducks in a row and see what happens this season for the Sens.
Yeah. So, and I want to talk a little bit about DJ Smith too. How
Mm.
he's still there. Obviously, I think similar to Dorian. His days might be numbered depending on how the start of the season goes. He could be a candidate for if October doesn't go their way, and then they start they start falling in November a little bit, or they're just not performing it the way that they should. If maybe he's somebody that they would have to let go. I think a lot of Sens fans are a bit frustrated with how he's done. I don't know if he's necessarily brought the absolute best out of these players. I guess I'm interested to hear your thoughts on DJ and if you think he's still the best fit for Ottawa, at least for the start of the season.
Yeah, I think that DJ is a fine coach, from what I can tell. I'm not some great hockey mind, so I don't exactly know how to run a hockey team myself.
Yeah.
But from what I've heard and from what it seems like, he's a player's coach. He's not to say that he's all buddy buddy with him and that he's the guy's best friends, but um, I think that there are some coaches that are maybe a little firmer, a little stricter, a little meaner per se. Um, that maybe could have gotten a little bit more if they could find the right balance with a younger squad like this. I would give DJ until the end of November. If we are not at least 2 games above actual 500, not NHL 500, then I would fire him. I think we've been too bad too many times in too many different Novembers at this point to risk anything past that. If we continue to slip, I feel like it's put up or shut up at this point, and I know the guys know that. From the interviews I've seen this offseason, they're working hard and ready to put forth the effort and start off the season right. October was okay, I think, for the most part. Last year started off a little rocky, but figuring out, I think it was growing pains with the new additions of Giroux and DeBrincat and trying to figure out how those lines went, because those lines were in a blender for the first part of that year, and it kind of worked, and then November hit and just like always fell apart, and we're out of a playoff spot basically by the end of November and had to fight just to get back even anywhere close to it at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Um, Ultimately, like we saw, fell short, but I think definitely shows just the fight that the team has. When there was that double header against Detroit, I think that was a huge moment last year for the Sens. Brady challenging the entire bench to fight who wants it, and all the Detroit just sitting down. Nobody wanted it.
No, nobody
I
wanted
think
it.
looking at the Atlantic Division this year, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bruins slip out of the playoffs. You lose Krejci, you lose or you lose Bergeron,
Yeah.
and I don't know how you have Pavel Zacha be your number one C and expect to make it in the playoffs in an Atlantic that is this stacked at this point, because Detroit is kind of here and Buffalo is kind of here and the Lightning haven't gone away and the Panthers haven't gone away and the Leafs haven't gone away. So you got to go somewhere, and I feel like for the Bruins it's not going to be top of the league anymore, and for the Sens hopefully it isn't going to be the bottom of the league anymore.
Right. Yeah. Last episode, I was talking with Dean about how we were feeling about the Bruins going into this season, and there's definitely some apprehension there, especially with the uncertainty at the time for Bergeron. Of course, now we know he just recently announced his retirement, and so that leaves a huge void. I think it's either going to be Zacha or maybe Charlie Coyle with how many years he spent there. He gets a look at number 1C, but I think most fans understand that, in terms of number 1 centers in the league, he would definitely be at the bottom of the list. Maybe not the very bottom, but it's not inspiring a lot of confidence. So that at least that's encouraging for Ottawa, that they hopefully have some wiggle room there. But yeah, like you mentioned, Detroit's going to be looking bigger. They got a lot of bigger name players to come. Obviously, they traded for DeBrincat. They've picked up a couple other guys. I'm trying to think who else they picked up. They got another year of Perron. And then Buffalo, I said in the last episode, I think they're going to qualify for the playoffs. I still think that. They're
a good team.
They're looking really good. Their forward group, I'm just absolutely in love with. Not just because they have like 2 or 3 players that were on Vegas. Alex Tuck looks dynamite there. I was sad to see him go, but I think it worked for both teams. Peyton Krebs is starting to get a little bit of a role there. So we'll see. I don't think it's a lock for any team in the Atlantic really, that's fighting at least. I think, if I'd had to say teams that are definitely going to make it out of there, I don't have, it's a short list, honestly. Like I would have a hard time betting against Toronto with how good they've been, and they added Bertuzzi there too. I don't think Florida is going away now that they've had the success that they had this past year. I did think maybe Tampa would take a step back and might open up a spot. We'll see. It could be a scenario where, come March, come April, Boston and Tampa are fighting for a wild card spot, and maybe Buffalo's in the mix too, or maybe Buffalo's even, in third in the division, something like that. I could totally see a scenario where you have 5 teams coming out of the Atlantic and 3 in the Metro, there's probably 6 teams realistically that are in the mix there. Maybe, I don't think Montreal's going to be fighting for a spot this year, and then maybe Detroit falls back, or maybe Ottawa does. I don't know, but it should be, the most fascinating division, and certainly the Eastern Conference is going to be more competitive. I think most people will say that the Eastern is more competitive than the West. That's just how it's been.
I'd say you're right on with that. I think, however, as a biased Sens fan, I would put us above Detroit for sure. Just the way we matched up against them last year. I can't see them, obviously, in a series, but I think over the course of a year, being higher up than us again. And I think that I'm, as a friend of multiple Bruins fans, I am looking forward to Bruins no longer just automatically winning every game. I'm ready for some new faces and new blood in the playoffs, and I think what I see, what I could see Ottawa doing if they do make it, right, which is, I think, not a far reach, but not, I think, a lock at this point, would be making hopefully a Florida type run by just being gritty and working hard. But maybe that's me just drinking the Kool-Aid and being a Sens fan and reading Sens Twitter. But yeah, I think that they got it in them to make something happen. I think having solid goaltending not only helps the team by not letting pucks in the net, right, but also gives a little more confidence to let the other boys play how they want to play, and run around a little more and play some hockey. And hopefully DJ will let some hockey be played and not just do dump and chase, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think the last couple of seasons you have seen a much tougher Ottawa squad, especially with Brady there. I mean, you look at the. I think I saw a graphic. It was, penalty minutes for like all the captains, in the past season, and there was Brady over here, maybe a couple guys sprinkled in here, and then everybody else was down at this end,
At the
and it
other
was
end.
like it wasn't even close. Like Brady absolutely loves to scrap, and that totally trickles down with the rest of the group. They know that they're willing to fight for each other. I think they're going to be
Definitely.
tougher this year. They're going to be grittier, because they know what's at stake. If it's another disappointing season, that's going to be 7 season without playoffs. Detroit's looking at 7 right now too, so they're fighting. I was just looking at some of Detroit's while I mentioned it earlier. Some of their other acquisitions they've picked up Justin Hall, Shane Gostisbehere also they picked up, so they got a little bit heavier on D. They picked up Daniel Sprong, which I was very surprised that Seattle did not stick around with him or extend a contract with him, considering how well it seemed like he gelled with the team when he was picked up. I was very surprised by that. And then they got James Reimer as a little bit of insurance for Ville Husso there, but looking at the two squads, I think I'd probably still lean towards Ottawa also. Klim Kostin also joins the squad a little bit, a depth there at forward. We'll see how he gels, but I think at least one-on-one Ottawa versus Detroit, I'd put the edge with Ottawa. I think they've got an overall younger team. They seem hungrier to me. I don't know if, especially with how much turnover there's been in Detroit,
Right.
picking up other guys. I don't know if there's going to be that same chemistry that it feels like is building in Ottawa, right? Like doesn't that seem like how it's been? Is like the core is starting to get more acclimated to being there and building a culture of success.
Totally, yeah. It feels like there's the group of young guys that have been sort of through it. They caught the tail end of the bad hockey. Tim Stützle never played a game in the old uniforms. He never had to, despite having some suspect first line mates. That I think Derek Stepan was one of his first
Yeah.
wingers.
Yeah.
Like
He's doing a bit better
not the
now.
end of the world. Doing a little bit better. Having Brady with him and Drake, and it's been just such a blast. I think watching these guys grow up and watching this sort of develop from what was just like a couple of prospects, and then watching the draft with Alex Trebek announcing the pick for Stützle, and
Oh yeah.
knowing in my heart that it was correct, and then being proven oh so right over the last 2 years as he just dominates for his expected abilities, and as he grows up and becomes a man and is doing man hockey, and
Yeah.
yeah, just like walking Sid on the line last year. Like I think it might have been on the power play. It might have just been even strength, but just took the puck along the blue line, walked Sidney Crosby,
Oh,
walked in, sniped.
I
It
remember
was
that from the video. It was awesome.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he totally walked them. He went right down Main Street and frickin' sniped it. It was an awesome
the guy's
goal.
electric. He is. I think I've heard the Bar Down podcast talk about this. He is, I think, the definition of box office for me, right? Like the guy just sells tickets. You want to go
Absolutely.
see Tim
Jerseys
Stützle
too.
play hockey. Jerseys as well,
Yeah.
right? I want a Tim Stützle jersey.
I know. I'd love to get this one custoed with a Stützle nameplate. Yeah, I think it's still a bit early to talk about the busts out of the first round for that 2020 draft, but I think at least as far as the top 5 guys, a lot of people are talking about Lafreniere, and how he hasn't really worked out as New York intended, and then Quentin Byfield's getting there slowly. I think he's going to play a much more prominent role. He'll probably be on the first or second line left wing for LA this year, but I think at least as of right now, it looks like Stützle should have been the number 1 guy coming out of that draft.
And I would even add that Jake Sanderson should have been the number 2 guy coming out of that draft. I think we have the two best players out of that draft, and
That's right. He was
we're looking
fifth
like
overall.
a couple of bank robbers.
Yeah, that might be one of the
Yeah.
The rarer instances of Dorian, hitting the nail right on the head.
Yeah. We've had some luck. We've also had some down years, like drafting Boucher at 10. Not gonna say he's not gonna work out, but 10th
He
maybe
he
could have gotten a better pick there.
yeah, he's not projected to be where a 10th overall guy should be going. I don't think. I mean, there's diamonds in the rough. We talk about Tage Thompson over the last couple of years. He wasn't expected to be anywhere near that level, but you don't really see that explosiveness in Boucher, at least as far as I know. I haven't really followed a ton of his like OHL stuff, but yeah, I don't think he's going to be at that same level as some other guys that are going, in the early parts of the first round. But that's always going to happen. I mean, it's so tough to have a management group that consistently hits on picks. They're magic beans. Steve Dangle puts it.
Yeah.
They're magic beans, and you never know what's the right formula to get them to grow into this beautiful beanstalk, or if they're not going to do anything. If the peddler solely is some bad beans.
Some bad beans. Yeah, right. It's all just gambling on who can make it happen, and who can put it together, and yeah, it's all a crapshoot. But that's why it's fun, right? There's no guarantees.
No, and sometimes it's just a matter of the timing in which a prospect comes into the team or into the pipeline, or the fit with a certain squad. I think that might be a little bit of the reason why we see Lafreniere maybe not playing as well as he was initially projected. I mean, at the time, it wasn't at Bedard levels of hype, but I mean, it was seriously there. Like, people were talking about the sweepstakes for Lafreniere, like it was a super big deal that New York was able to get that pick, especially after technically qualifying for the playoffs. They didn't they didn't beat Carolina in that play-in round, which is why they were able to win that pick. But
crazy.
It is crazy to see the sorts of scenarios where a first overall pick, or maybe some other guys, not necessarily first, but in that same sort of echelon, how they maybe they don't gel well with the squad, or they got brought in a little bit too early and fed to the wolves, or maybe they didn't have a roster spot for them right at the time that they drafted them. So you see them go somewhere else. Taylor Hall, for example, look at what he did in New Jersey. Some other examples like that. Obviously, Yakupov didn't work out, but that's a whole Edmonton thing that I don't think we need to get into. But they got a good guy a few years back. Number,
I don't remember his name.
90 something, 92 maybe. He's
about
pretty
our
good.
age.
I mean, yeah. I think he's exactly my age. Yeah.
Right.
That always feels good, doesn't it?
Like the consensus best player in the league for the last 2 years that also happens to be as old as you are. Yeah. It's not the most fun feeling.
Like, oh, damn. I mean, it definitely could never have been me, but I guess technically somebody my age could be doing what he's doing. Which is it's like, well, I'm doing okay, but I'm no Connor McDavid.
I'm no Connor McDavid. At 18, he's like captain of the Oilers, and I'm sitting there like, oh, cool. I'm barely making it through college. Sick.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
Definitely something that gets glossed over a bit.
Absolutely.
Especially for somebody who's never, laced up skates. I barely have played, or I haven't played hockey, but I have skated a little bit. I'm terrible. I can't skate backwards. I can't stop. I don't know how to do it. And so to me, especially as somebody who didn't grow up watching or grow up skating, like it is incredible to see like how fast they are. And we talk about, there's this guy's skating. It's no good. It's like, you have no idea the level that these guys are at. Like, can you even comprehend what they can do? Have you seen some of those like photographs of guys like Makar or like McDavid, where they're literally like almost parallel to the ice, like on their edges, like when they're turning or going super fast? It's like
fully tilted.
Yeah, it's like these guys are like defying laws of physics, and you're saying, oh, they're okay. maybe not those guys. I mean, I don't think many
guys.
people are talking about how Makar's overrated or how
Right.
McDavid could put up a couple more points, but
Right.
I mean, geez, 150, that's pretty
Uh,
good. But
I
talk to
could
me
do
when
that.
you get to 200, okay?
Right.
Yeah. But it is crazy, and I do think going back to the All-Star game and the just the weekend in general, it does have a different feel than maybe it did, and it's because the players are disinterested. Really, they especially if it's in a location where they don't really want to go.
Right.
The last couple of years have been fine. I think they were excited to go to Florida, and they do
Mhm.
try to bring some new like elements every year, which I think is good that the NHL is trying. I just don't
Right.
think the players are really into it that much. That they're just so focused on this season and
Right.
getting better. They don't want to get hurt. Obviously, that's a huge factor, and they just don't seem as into it as maybe years past. They they don't. I mean, the skill competitions. I think they do try a lot in those. Not
Mhm.
maybe fully, but the once it gets to the actual game, it's the games itself. Like I don't know. They just don't seem as that fun to me. Like
It's tough. It's tough to replicate the intensity of a hockey game. And
yeah,
I think
there's
not
nothing on the line.
every regular season game is the craziest, most intense, most like pressure-filled atmosphere, but there's definitely still something to be played for. And I think it's hard to find that incentive when it's not points in the standings, right? Like whether it's money to charity or whatever. I think that they're need to work on, I guess, the incentives that, like you were saying, of just trying to get the players more incentivized, more bought in. But ultimately, pretty small drop in the bucket. I feel like I'm pretty satisfied with the current NHL format. As far as like big picture stuff, I feel like people always have something to pick at. I would rather see infinite 3-on-3 overtime than a shootout, but shootouts are kind of cool. It's just not hockey, but it
Yeah,
kind of is. I feel like I don't have a lot of traction in that argument as a more recent hockey fan, but ultimately, more hockey is better. So why not keep going until someone scores?
yeah. And the winning team for the All Star game does win $1 million. I mean, it's not like a lot for these guys, especially because it's not like
These are the guys that are
the
paid the
yeah,
most.
like these guys do make the most money usually. So
Right.
it is a bit different than saying like us. One of us gets $1 million, but
Right.
um, yeah, I don't know what the answer is necessarily, but I think they do have to keep experimenting, and there are definitely are a couple other things, with the current NHL that people don't like. I think a lot of people say like the on ice product has never been better, but the
Hmm.
way that the games are presented and everything else surrounding the NHL is not nearly at the same level as other like the other big four sports. Like it's the
Right.
best product, but it's the worst league is kind of the narrative. Like some of the decisions that Gary Bettman's made over the past few years. They obviously the ads on the jerseys was a huge one, which seemed like it was coming, and it was really sad when it was finally announced. The Fanatics deal going into effect in the 2024-2025 season, which is a 10-year deal. Also, I don't know if people remember that, but it's a freaking 10-year deal. I know a lot of people, myself included, are incredibly disappointed with that and with the quality of
Yeah.
the jerseys that they're currently making. I know that they are planning on using the same factory in Canada that the on ice Adidas jerseys are produced in. So maybe that's a step in the right direction, but it's going to take a lot of convincing, I think, for fans to be on board with that. And there's other things like they just announced that they're not going to be doing the specialty jerseys anymore because of the backlash with players opting out wearing the Pride jerseys.
Right.
I think that was a huge mistake. I don't know if I'm sure you agree that it doesn't seem like a step in the right direction. It's just bailing out the owners who don't have to deal with the flack of one of their players not electing to skate in warm-ups. It's not sending the right message as far as the hockey is for everyone slogan is concerned. They're not saying that people
Right.
of minority groups are allowed to be there, which is too bad.
Yeah, totally. And I think you nailed it. It's just backing out, right? Like they are sort of backing away from the pressure, which doesn't seem like what a big four sport and like uh, you know international entity should be doing, to be like pushed back by some like online haters. But hopefully, enough players will stand up and speak for what they believe in and support causes that they support. I do remember the wording being somewhat vague, and that perhaps there could be some jerseys that they just wear for the games, because it said they can't change their jerseys, or maybe they just wear Pride Night jerseys for the actual game, which I think
Hmm.
would be better anyways. Why is it just a warm up?
That
Like,
would be crazy. That
just
would
wear it
be
for the
good.
game.
I think that would be good. Yeah, and I think at first when they were talking about it, they're like, okay, well, let's just if you're gonna be doing no jerseys at all, like that means no military jerseys, like
Right?
no hockey fights cancer jerseys, which I think is a terrible decision. I mean, they literally auctioned those off for cancer research after the games, so I
Right.
think that would be a huge mistake. We'll see if maybe they change their tune. I kind of doubt it. And then as far as you know, the messages from some players, I know Connor McDavid, who was like historically been one of the least like outspoken as far as like his actual opinions. Like it seems like he pretty much just you know goes with the company line more or less. He did
Typical
recently,
hockey guy.
yeah, he did recently mention that he was disappointed in the decision to not include the Pride warm up jerseys and he talked about how you know he is in favor of having them and he wants fans of all different backgrounds to be welcomed at the Edmonton games and just in the league in general, which I think was huge. I mean, you really don't get that, especially from the superstars. Like you get
Yeah.
some
And
lesser
in
known
hockey.
players. Yeah, and in hockey definitely. I mean, I think the NFL has had a couple of gay players come out recently, which we haven't had any active NHL players come out as gay. I know Luke Prokop,
Hmm.
a few years back, but he's still in the pipeline, I think, for Nashville. But I don't know if he actually projects to be an NHL defenseman. I would love to see that. I think it would be super good for
Absolutely.
any kid growing up who doesn't really think they belong there to see a gay player play in the National Hockey League. And I think the Predators organization has been very supportive of him, and they've been pretty outspoken about how they feel about anyone being welcome at their games, which is awesome and definitely good to see because you don't get that from every organization, I don't think.
No, there's definitely some that bite their tongue, and the Sens were definitely ones that were one of those organizations with the previous ownership, and I think that was one of the points of contention. In addition to, I think some of the directions and commands made by the previous ownership, I think that was one of the big things, at least for me, that has come out since that really put the nail in the coffin. No pun intended. Um,
I
for
think
my
they
feelings about the previous ownership, just that it wasn't right, and they made it happen. They kept the Sens from like going bankrupt and like disappearing, which is wonderful, and kept the Sens in Ottawa, which is wonderful because it's part of the culture of the team, and it feels like part of the culture of the city. Obviously, as a non-Ottawa person, I can't like comment fully on that, but
yeah.
it certainly seems like they kept it around, which was great, and then handed it on to the next person, which was great. Now it's up to Michael Andlauer to make a real hockey team out of us. And in the wise words of Pierre Dorion, we are a team.
Yeah, they are a team. and it is tough when you as a fan of the organization and as a fan of the team, when you don't feel like the ownership group and the direction that the team is in, both culturally and on the ice, is just not there. And so now, yeah, with the new group coming in, hopefully it means better things for the culture as far as acceptance and as far as support. Maybe mental health is something that's been stressed more over the last couple of seasons, which has been great. More players coming out, especially I think they have the Bell does that let's talk day,
Yep.
which is something that a lot of players are involved with, which is good. You saw Spencer Knight was recently going into the player assistance group,
Yep.
and he didn't divulge into what was going on there, which I think was fine. But it looks like he's making a step, so it's good to see that players are taking the steps that maybe they wouldn't have taken 10, 15 years ago, that they do have they have emotions, they have feelings,
Right.
they are not robots designed to play the game. They're real people with real feelings and families and situations just as anybody else. So it's good
Totally.
to see that.
Totally, and I think that's one way in that NHL is doing maybe a little better than the NBA and the NFL, and MLB in that sense. Granted, I don't follow all of them as closely as I do NHL, but I feel like um, those players in those leagues are still struggling for the awareness and support they need, and fighting for that through their players' unions. And it feels like the NHL, while not perfect, has at least some of those things in place, like the NHL Players Assistance Program, that I think we've seen has had a lot of success in the past. I think Bobby Ryan is one of those successes, and I think
Yeah.
that there's others around the league that have been able to go into this program and come back out and continue playing hockey or leave the game of hockey because that's what's best for them. Um, yeah, it's just nice to see that there's some support to the people that you spend so much time rooting for and like caring for, I guess you could say. Um, yeah, it's good to see that they care about not only the product that these athletes can bring, but also the athletes themselves.
Yeah, and that definitely will help bring in free agents too. Like, it's just one another level. Like the team will take care of you and your family. Will be there if you know you're not going through a great time. You're going through a difficult situation. I know, at least with Vegas this past season, Alex Petrangelo was going through something with his young daughter. I think she's 4 years old, and she had a medical issue where didn't look like she was going to be able to walk again. And then so he was able to step away from the team for, I think it was about a month, something like that,
Wow.
to be with her. He couldn't play hockey, and who could blame him? I mean,
Yeah.
going through something like that. I think it was his youngest daughter. He didn't know if she was even, I don't even know if she was breathing on her own. So
Well,
it's great to have organizations that are there for the players as people more than just pawns in the game. Which I guess as a Vegas specifically, it sounds a little backwards because of the way that they ship out players and bring new ones in. But when they're there, they do treat them with the utmost respect, which is always good to see as a fan.
absolutely, yeah, and I think that notion or that like sort of feeling that people have about Vegas with them shipping in and out players, I think that's just the business side of hockey. You got to have some people around for some amount of time uh, to create, I think, any amount of success. You can't just have a full roster of free agents come in and win like you could in maybe a basketball league. But um, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that Vegas does what they have to win hockey games, and it's been proven over the last 6 years of existence that they can win some hockey games.
Yeah. Yeah, and they don't always get the best reputation because of how successful they were. I think part of the hate for how they treat players, or at least the perceived way that they treat players, is probably amplified by just how much other fan bases dislike them. And I know this is totally like a Vegas fan, like, oh, the league hates us, yada yada yada. But I mean, it is. I don't think they do anything that much different than other teams, but obviously they were able to make the right adjustments to find that core and have that success. So we'll see, as we mentioned on the last episode, if other teams follow suit and maybe they let go of some core players that have been there for a while, that they feel that if they get rid of them, they can improve the team. We'll see if teams do that. Maybe if it's another bad year for Ottawa, just for example, if they find somebody that just doesn't seem to be working out and let them go to improve. I don't know if there's really a good candidate for that. On Ottawa specifically, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of dead weight there, at least as far as bigger name guys that would fetch, a good price, or even if just to get rid of like a big salary dump. I don't think they really have anybody like that, which is always a good scenario. But
right.
Yeah.
Right. I see that as something more like what Toronto is going through. I saw Toronto doing that this offseason.
Yeah.
And dumping somebody, but I mean, I don't think that they have their money problems figured out yet. And
No, they don't.
Samsonov still in arbitration. I think they could still lose Willie Nylander, which I think is a big shakeup to that organization, and they have not been proven to win hockey games yet. I mean, one round is good, but
there's 4.
How about any other games after that? Yeah. It's just not a lot of progress.
Yeah, the writing's been on the wall for a little while now, especially with, after every disappointing season-ending game, they talk about, which one of the big 4 or maybe multiple is going to go. They did actually agree. The arbitration deal did go through, so Samsonov did sign.
Oh, for Samsonov.
I think it was 3.55, something like that, which was pretty much right down the middle between what the player and the team were looking for. So they did get that squared away. And they just announced Matt Murray is going to be on the LTIR for, he's going to be out for the full season, which some people were thinking might be something like cap circumvention. At first I was sort of thinking it's a little fishy, but because he did mention that he in May he was going to be good to go if called upon. He was the backup for Samsonov during that playoff run. He probably was playing through something, or he would have played through something just because it was the playoffs. So I don't know if it's necessarily circumvention, but out for the whole season is definitely a little suspect. We'll see how that goes. And even with him on LTIR and Jake Muzzin, they're still like $2 million over the cap. So they might have to waive some of their young guys or get rid of somebody to get under the cap, which we'll see what happens there. I don't think they're going to, at this point, trade Nylander or trade another big name guy like Brody, who just, the numbers for the AAV is there, and they just dump them. I don't think that happens. They probably find a way to, send some guys down to the Marlies and maybe ship out Lafferty or Connor Timmins or somebody like that just to get compliant. We'll see.
Right.
But yeah, they're going to be cap strapped pretty much all season. They're probably going to be running 11-5 or 11-6 or 13-5 or something, or 12-5, I guess, for a lot of the year. I know Vegas had to do that for some games a couple of years back when they were really tight to the cap. So that's probably what we'll end up seeing for them.
Yeah, and that's not a recipe to easily win hockey games either. So
no.
It just makes the Atlantic that much more interesting.
Yeah, and I don't think they're gonna fall back enough where they would be out of the playoff contention. It seems pretty unlikely unless they really have some bad injury luck or just some acquisitions don't go their way. I don't think I'd see a scenario where Bertuzzi is actively hurting the rosters.
Right.
Maybe
right.
Reeves, he's older. He doesn't provide much at all offensively. I'd be surprised if he scores 1 or 2 goals the whole season with
Right.
Toronto. But yeah, I think they'll still be super competitive. I would probably, as I mentioned last episode, I'd probably lean more towards Tampa leaving the race than Toronto or Florida even.
Totally.
They're getting older. They don't have as many young guys. Although for whatever reason, despite all their success and trading picks and things, they find a way to still bring up prospects in like a way that they come in and then they gel with the team like right away.
Right.
Like we saw that a little bit with Nick Perbix this last season. Ross Colton stepped in really well, and he just got a big 4x4 deal in Colorado because of it. They've had a couple other guys, so they just, the way that they bring their prospects up, you never really know who's just gonna come up from their organization. It could be like a 6th-round pick, and then he just finds a way to break through, and then he's a regular in the NHL all of a sudden. And 2 years down the road, he's gonna be a super big name free agent that we never heard of, a few years back.
Yeah. It's funny how those different organizations can all have their own, different ways to pull people in, whether it's through free agency or through the draft. I think we recently heard a Barry Trotz quote running the Preds saying, because he had been quoted in the past, I think, as saying, like, just bring me free agents, like, I don't want draft picks or something, and now he had changed his tone. But yeah, it's interesting to see how the GMs or owners or presidents of hockey ops have different techniques or ways or like methods to get players that they need, because you gotta get it all that you need to make a hockey team that wins, and then you gotta get it all under the cap, and it's definitely some magic and some wizardry, but it's pretty cool to watch them all pull it off.
Yeah, and some teams bring up prospects a lot quicker than others. Like, I think St. Louis is usually pretty slow with their prospects. So I think Tampa Bay can be slower too, and then you've got other teams where it seems like it doesn't take very long for them to step in and play a big role. So it is interesting to see how they do it and what sort of mix of draft picks and free agents, and we haven't seen it very often, but the occasional offer sheet, I don't think we'll be seeing any offer sheets this season. At this point, we probably would have already seen one by now. There weren't really a ton of good candidates, I don't think. Yeah. Maybe there were some, but especially with the flat cap still, there aren't that many teams that it would make sense for them to offer sheet, a semi big name player or a big name player, because they don't have the room, or they'd just be wasting, valuable years with that young player. Like, the teams with the space to bring in somebody are not in a position to get the most out of that player if they brought him in. Like okay, yeah, Anaheim has some space to bring some guys in, but why would they do that? They're nowhere near. They're nowhere
not
near
ready for that.
So yeah, I think that's why we haven't seen as much of the offer sheets. Just in general, it's tough. I do think it can be used more for some of the younger, like the lower level players, like less than $1 million, who maybe a team is really tight to the cap, and you see like an opportunity where the RFA is not gonna be able to be re-signed. Like, maybe they're gonna be walking to UFA, and rather than fighting a bunch of other teams for the UFA rights, you just offer sheet them, and the team probably won't be able to match because they don't have the cap space, and so you just acquired a younger player for not that many picks, probably, because if it's it's less than $1 million. I don't remember exactly the structure for how the offer sheets break down, but I don't think like the lowest level option is really that expensive. So
yeah,
I don't think it's even a first round pick.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers exactly, but yeah,
it
definitely is something that isn't used a lot, and it feels like it's more of like something I would do in Chow franchise mode.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then the computer GMs will accept it far easier than any of the real life GMs.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to move on from their own special magic beans. But yeah, I think this next season in the NHL is gonna be a good one. I'm really looking forward to some games. I think for the first time in 4 years, I'm gonna go see the Sens. I'm gonna try and go out to a game in Seattle.
Oh,
Get to climb the
awesome.
pledge. Right around New Year's, I think is the plan, to try and get out there and see a game because I can take a train out there,
Oh, really?
and watch a game, yeah, and then take the train back. And I think it'll be during my winter break, so I won't have work during that time.
Nice.
Maybe a game in Calgary as well, but that would be, I think, a stretch to pull off 2 games in one year by myself. Obviously, if we're doing a trip all together, we're going wherever, and it's gonna be a blast, and we'll get some good tickets. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I would love to be able to go and see the Sens in person again, see any of the players I know now, because I feel like the last time I watched them, none of these guys were playing. Maybe
Yeah.
Shabby, maybe Kachuk. That's it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about some of the players that were on the squad that we saw back in 2016 versus now. Like
Hmm.
it's pretty much nobody. You had Stone and Carlson on that squad. Bobby Ryan was still there.
JG Pajot.
Pajot, yep, he's in New York now.
Oh,
Yeah, I, I don't know. I don't know if there's a single player there like
it would be
Bray.
Shabbat.
Oh, Shabbat, yeah.
Would be the one person. He's the only person from the playoff run,
From the conference
and he was
finals.
just in the organization. I don't even know if he played
Yeah,
any
yeah,
minutes.
he probably wasn't. I mean, he's only like 26, I think, so
Yeah,
he might not even been playing. He would have been 20 at the
6 years
time.
ago. Yeah,
Yeah, like he probably maybe got a cup of coffee or something like that, but that
right.
was probably it. So yeah, it's a completely different team. It's a lot more fun team, although you
Yeah,
didn't know it at the time that they were going to be going on the downswing. Um, But yeah, it would be really fun to catch them. I would love to go check out Seattle. Maybe do a
yeah,
Seattle Vancouver
that would be super cool.
double because if you're that close, I feel like you gotta do them both. Otherwise, it's a whole other trip. You gotta go out
Right.
there. I'm trying to go to all the
Yeah.
arenas, so I would definitely like to do a double whammy if I was going to Seattle. That would be
Yeah.
cool.
And then
Uh,
I think Calgary Edmonton is a perfect other double whammy.
oh, definitely.
I mean, a couple hours apart, but still beautiful area and great hockey just locations.
Yeah. I think it'd probably be a fun drive going up to Edmonton, or I guess if we were going down from Edmonton, whatever order it works out. But I think that would be fun. I don't think you'd necessarily need to do a flight. Although the thing about planning hockey trips is it's in the winter months, so
Right.
you always got, especially in Canada, it's like you got to worry about is there any sort of derailment because of weather that's going to totally screw everything over. I remember when I was planning to, because I was flying to Arizona for the Arizona Vegas trip, and
Right.
my flight got canceled. It was supposed to I was supposed to fly Friday morning or afternoon, I think.
And
Um,
come into Vegas to meet me and you.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
all
that's
flying
right.
into
So,
Vegas together.
yeah, you two were flying into Vegas, and that was the plan for me also. And then the weather was coming; it was gonna be really bad, like all overnight. So I was like scrambling. I was like, "Oh my god! Like I'm gonna miss this. I'm not gonna be able to go see my friends, go see the games that we already paid for and everything." And so luckily, I was able to
Right.
just get a Thursday flight and drive down to the airport right that day, and then I flew to DC, spent the night there, which I was just going to be doing a straight flight right to Vegas, I believe, initially, and instead I spend the night in a hotel which I wasn't planning on paying for in DC, and then took like the 5 hour or whatever flight from DC to Arizona, which you guys drove in the rental vehicle from Vegas all the way down to Phoenix to pick me up at the
Hmm.
airport, because then that's where our first game was. We were going to see the Coyotes, so that was just a crazy travel derailment. luckily it worked out. I don't think I ever actually got refunded for my initial ticket that got canceled. I don't.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, I probably could have, and
Oh
maybe
well.
I just messed something up or whatever. But, that's what happens. So, you always have to factor that in. But you never really know. I
It'll
mean,
be interesting.
like when did we plan that trip out? Like a couple months in advance, or like a month and 2 weeks or
If
something
that,
like that? Yeah. So like,
maybe 2 months max.
yeah,
Max 2 months.
never know. Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have another one spring up for whether it's bachelor party or whatever we end up doing, whatever we call it. We'll go out another double hockey arena. We still got to do LA Anaheim, which is I think the easiest
Yeah,
1-2 punch
that one
as far as like
that one shouldn't be a
flying
problem.
somewhere.
Yeah, because you don't have to really go
No.
to two different
And I think
cities.
it'd be a blast just to go out to LA for a couple days.
Yeah, that would be a good one. And then I don't think you would try to do San Jose too, because it's such a pain to drive all the way up California, like deal with all that traffic, and then 3 different games. Like now you're probably thinking about taking some days off of work, so that probably wouldn't go well. But yeah, that would probably have to be a standalone. I gotta go to Denver too, because that's where Dean is. He's in Colorado. We were in Denver, but we did not go to any games because that's where we were.
Right.
We were splitting off after the Vegas Arizona trip. So
Right.
that one will be an easy one, because then Dean won't have to fly anywhere.
Right.
One
And
less.
he can come get us from the airport.
Yes, that's always
Yeah,
nice.
if you let me know, I will happily fly into Denver for that and go to that game with y'all.
Yeah, you're much closer than I am.
It's pretty simple to get down there. It's
You
not too bad.
You wouldn't be able to drive, but you could definitely fly.
Oh.
It's like a 12.
I mean, 16 hours
Yeah, 16 hours. Oh.
to drive to Denver from here, which is a lot, but also it's the West, so everything is far away.
Yeah. And you're looking on a map. You're like, oh, it's really not that far. I mean, look, it's like right there. And then
I'm closer to Calgary.
Yeah, you're close. Yeah, isn't it like Calgary's your closest arena, and Seattle's like basically just as close?
2 minutes further away to get to Seattle than Calgary.
So
It's 6 hours 13 to the Saddle Dome, 6 hours 15 to the Climate Pledge.
So a slight change in traffic.
Just a little bit different.
It goes one way or the other. I was just looking, because I was talking about it in the last episode. The closest ones for me, and it is Toronto and Washington or DC are the same, basically the same. They're like a 6.5 hour drive for me, which I was surprised.
For ones you haven't been to.
Yeah, which I was surprised that they were both like that, pretty much the same time. I was like, really? I kind of thought DC would have been further, but I guess it's pretty far north compared to like some of the other spots in DC and like Virginia and South Carolina and stuff like that. So.
It's significantly further north than like Raleigh. Raleigh is a heck of a drive further south. Listening last week about you talking about that with Dean, it was that's a rough one. I think it would have to be Raleigh, Nashville, which is still a drive, but not too bad.
Yeah, I feel like for Raleigh you'd have to sort of do it on your own, because like you could do like Nashville and St. Louis, or
True,
because they're pretty close, or St. Louis and Chicago, maybe something like that. They're all pretty close there, so you could probably do something like that. But yeah, Raleigh is pretty much on its own, and then even the 2 Florida ones are like a 3.5 hour drive away. They're on different coasts, and you gotta go through the frickin' Everglades to get there. I've heard that highway is also terrible, that cuts across the state. I've never been. Well, I've been to Florida, but I've never driven in Florida, so I don't know what it's like. But I guess I'd probably still try to do those 2, just because.
Why not? Right there, they're close enough.
Yeah, like that's still pretty close. It's the same as going to Edmonton, Calgary, I guess. So.
Right. Right.
Not too bad.
Nope.
So we'll definitely have to plan for something like that. We'll see. I definitely want to go to at least one new arena next year, or at least go to a game. Doesn't necessarily have to be a new one, but I gotta see at least something. Going live to see the games is so much more fun than watching them at home. Like,
absolutely.
You can't believe the speed and the energy in the arena, especially when the home team scores. It's just, or you get to see overtime or something like that if you get lucky. It's just such a fun game to watch, and I'm so thankful to have it. That's why I love hockey, as the title suggests.
Brett loves hockey.
That's what they say.
The streets.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, Brett. I really appreciate it being on the podcast. It's nice to know that I'm your second favorite friend, and that everyone who comes on the podcast after me is not as cool. Only Dean is cooler.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Second's good.
I'll take it.
And who knows? There could be a huge drop off after this. I'm kidding. Anybody else on the show? Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate you, and I'm sure we'll have you on again soon. Maybe once the season gets going and we see how the Sens are faring.
Totally. We can do something when the Sens meet the Golden Knights for the first time in the season.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun.
A little breakdown afterwards.
A little bickering from one of us, I'm sure.
Yeah, after we win, it'll be great.
That call was bullshit. You know it.
No, the Stützle goal wiped it all away. Korpisalo made the save. It's perfect.
I'm sure he did. Yeah, I'm sure he did.
Right.
I noticed he didn't mention the Mark Stone hat trick at all.
Oh, yeah, no, we don't need to talk about that.
In Ottawa, too, of course.
In Ottawa, on the return home.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks so much. Appreciate you being here.
I love you, Brendan.
Love you too, man. We'll catch you next time. Thanks.
Bye. Hollywood, baby. Let's do it.
It's Hollywood.